Hi, everyone. I want to kind of officially start this subcommittee meeting of the Ranked Choice Voting Subcommittee. It's 8:31 at 5:02, and we have most of our subcommittee members here, and we also have a representative from Ranked Choice Voting that is here to answer any questions that we may have. I kind of put together a little a kind of, a real, loose agenda. And I don't know if you guys got it, but we were just going to, and then I sent out some FAQs from Ranked Choice Voting and that they sent me. I sent them out to you, to all of you as well. I do want to note that, we are putting Ranked Choice Voting together to ultimately, if we have an amendment that we bring forward by December 31st, we would put together some FAQs for our website. Rank the FAQs that they sent, that FairVote sent, they're from FairVote. It's a advocacy group. So ours are going to look a little bit different. Ours are just, we'll be stating like what it is, what we're proposing, what, things like that. But I really appreciate FairVote sending those over. I know that's one of the things about ranked choice voting is people have a lot of questions, right? So I was going to open it up for Lisa to say, if she wants to say a little bit of something, and then any questions that anybody has for FairVote that's come up. I know we've had a chance to get a response from Christine Cook. We've also talked to Greg Kimsey, the auditor, and got his input about it. And so if there are some things that I had some questions about, and I did talk to Lisa about, with Greg's, that Greg Kimsey wasn't quite sure of, like he made mention of the Alaska model, which I think that his wasn't really what when I looked at it, and then when I talked to Lisa, it doesn't really represent what he was saying it represented. So it's quite different. And there is another couple of, just minor things. But I'm going to go ahead and let Lisa talk for a little bit and just talk about, because she's kind of been keeping up, with what's happening. I think she called in for that last meeting. So she was able to listen to Auditor Kimsey and his responses and those kind of stuff. But I'll go ahead and let Lisa. Lisa, can you tell people who you are with FairVote?
Sure. Thank you so much, Commissioner Niles, and thank you, commissioners, for taking the time to do this important work for your community. My name is Lisa Arow. I'm the executive director of FairVote Washington. Spent my career as a teacher, math teacher, came into this work about 3-4 years ago as a volunteer, and have gotten swept along in the enthusiasm of working on democracy reform at this point in our country's history. So I'm very impressed with the level of competency that you all have achieved in a very short period of time. It's enviable. I've been working on this for a few years, and I have to say that really everything you all have done and said and heard, written, that I've been aware of has been spot on. And also just really hats off to Auditor Kimsey with all the things on his plate that a county auditor needs to keep track of, for him to be able to come in and, again, as competently and accurately as he did the other day, respond to all the different questions you brought him. Really want to just underscore what a great job he's doing there, just representing fairly to all of you what is going on. So I think you have a good handle on things. I don't have anything immediate. I guess the one thing I'll just say is, if it ever comes up, I just feel compelled to sort of correct the record. He did suggest that FairVote Washington had actually had something to do with the local options bill in the legislature, HB 1156, not having advanced to that we had maybe done something to pull that back. That was actually not the case. I think he was confusing that with the King County Charter Amendment that had been advancing this summer, and we concurred with our prime sponsor's decision to pull that off the table because it was facing some amendments that would have changed the policy to a point where we weren't as comfortable. But the local options bill, that was definitely not us pulling that one back. We're still going to be working full speed ahead to get that passed this year. But apart from that, Commissioner Niles, I don't have anything else that I wanted to mention at the outset. I'm happy to respond to questions.
Okay. I have I have I have one question about I know that we did get some information back from MRSC, and that will be forwarded on to the commissioners, as well as from um, Christine Cook, who works for the prosecuting attorney's office here. And we asked her a question about using ranked choice voting to determine the top two primary. So there was a bit of some questions about, like, oh, that's not using it, that's not using it to its full potential, or it's not, really, using ranked choice voting as greatly as we probably could if we, did it. Your opinion on whether or not that would be a good thing, a start. I know I have my own personal opinion about getting, voters used to ranked choice voting and initiating it in the primary process, and then eventually, if it, eventually gets to where we can use it in all of our elections, then newness would be out and people would know what they were doing. But do you have any thoughts about that, or does Fair Vote have any thoughts about that?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, Commissioner Niles. It's certainly the case that ranked choice voting has the possibility of a whole range of benefits, civic benefits, from cost savings to less negative campaigning and so on. Many of those, and some of them definitely are improved when ranked choice voting is able to be used in a single round of elections. So, for example, cost savings doesn't happen if you're going to still have two rounds of election. So there are some good reasons to be in favor of allowing ranked choice voting to be used to advantage to to combine what is currently a two-round election system into one round when that's feasible. For example, if there are only three candidates running, it makes a lot of sense to hold that election once instead of holding one election in August to eliminate one candidate and then have the voters come back in November to decide between the next two. But that said, as you pointed, I think Washington State isn't using ranked choice voting anywhere right now. So Clark County has the opportunity to show the way to a better way of voting. And again, I recognize they sound a little like an advocate there. And to that extent, then the opportunity for voters to try ranked choice voting, even if it needs to be within the context of a two-round primary, a two-round election system, so using ranked choice voting only in the primary, still brings advantages. Absolutely, allows so many of those concerns that ranked choice voting alleviates, vote splitting, spoiler effect, and so on. Those all happen in our primary elections, and the opportunity to use ranked choice voting in the primary for large fields of candidates is good. So we would heartily, Fair Vote Washington heartily approves of and would support the Charter Review Commission recommending ranked choice voting used only in the primary if that seems to be the only opportunity, because it would allow voters to give it a try, experience the benefits, and then could potentially choose to increase its use down the road if that seemed fitting.
Okay, great. Thanks
Sure.
for that answer. I know we did talk a little bit about with Auditor Kinsey about the
Mm-hmm.
savings. And given that he would be running, that, he has other jurisdictions doing different things going
Yes,
on in primaries, he's going at this time, just having one, the county elections not being, um, not having a primary wouldn't really particularly save the county that much money.
absolutely. Totally concur with his answer on that. So,
So,
yes, yes.
yeah. So, does anybody else have any questions for Lisa about, did anybody have a chance to take a peep at the FAQs? I know.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Oh,
Yes, when I talked to Greg, he said that they got to run a ballot in the primary countywide anyway, so it doesn't really save money. So the principle is going to have to be not on saving, but the other principles
Right.
of ranked choice voting. Um, in writing something in the charter, would you suggest a detailed process of on describing how ranked choice voting shall be done, or should it should be just a policy statement saying there should be ranked choice voting? I worry about the way when people read a charter. We have parts of our resolution amendments that can be overwhelming and confusing to folks, but and some people do read it. Not necessarily everybody does, but that's um, that's one question I have.
Sure. Commissioner Lastra, that's an excellent question. And in the local options bill that's currently in front of the legislature, still in committee, the choice that Fair Vote Washington and others who helped draft that bill made was to stay at a high level of policy and leave the nuts and bolts details like, well, what do you do if, if this or that, if there's a tie in this round, or how about if a voter marks two different candidates for their first choice, and all of those rules that need to be worked out with any kind of implementation, and that exists for our current way of voting too. That those are in the local options bill. The local options bill, if and when it passes, directs the Secretary of State's office to convene a work group composed of certain members. That's not relevant really to this conversation, but they would hammer out the rules, and those rules then would be under the in the WACs, the administrative code, and not in the legislation. So, and I have no legal training, I do want to tell you, but my understanding from all the advice that I have been privy to is that that is best practice for writing legislation, is to keep those details for a separate effort that would hammer out those details. And my understanding is when we Fair Vote Washington did work with the legal counsel that originally drafted a charter amendment for San Juan County 2 years ago, 2 years ago, right before COVID dropped, and we ended up not working with those advocates to go forward with that. But that was the same choice that was made in drafting that ordinance as well, to leave again what can amount to pages and pages of details about exactly what to do in this or that case when ballots are counted. And again, those sorts of details need to be part of any election method. Those details are part of the way we vote now. What do you do if a tie? Well, you flip a coin actually at the end of the day if you've done all the hand counting and this and that. So there, all of that stuff typically is would be left out of the charter amendment language, to my understanding.
Okay, thank you. The
Sure.
second question I have, um, in terms of strategy of potential areas where you would do this, the the administrative offices of a county are something that people don't really track on a day-to-day basis unless they have personal interactions with a county office. Um, I'm wondering strategy-wise, instead of saying you have to do ranked choice voting at this point in time, sort of like, you know, get it started and then you expand from there, would be to focus doing ranked choice voting only on the administrative offices, because that probably would help in terms of ensuring that you're going to get quality people that will be managing these operations that manage millions of dollars and have the experience. So I was just curious if um, Fair Vote would just focus on a certain sector of the elected officials and then worry about the others later.
Commissioner Lasher, I can honestly say I have never had that question, so you're going to get the benefit of my very first
Yeah.
time even thinking about what that might be.
Well, Lisa, just
Yes,
to let you know, though, that would be a question for the commission, but
absolutely. Okay, great.
to the
Yeah,
commission to decide.
we have not ever
The
considered that, and that
subcommittee's
doesn't.
not really
Yeah,
pushing
I'm
that, but
talking
yeah,
about
that would be a
a
question for the
strategy
commission.
and what Fair Vote would look like if would you pick the lowest lying fruit, and to me that might help voters. Ranked choice voting might help voters identify and select that versus policymakers at the council level.
The only thing I'll say, Commissioner Lasher, which does not directly answer your question, and I will have to leave that to folks who know more than I do to lay out that sort of strategy. But there was one thing in your question that I may have misheard, but I heard you talking about quality people, and I just did want to make sure that there's not any misunderstanding that ranked choice voting, wouldn't elect quality people.
Right,
That
right.
is
I understand,
definitely
but
okay. Great.
it
Okay, got it.
it does create the mind. Ranked choice voting does create the mind if you're going to hire somebody that you tend to think about it in order of who might be the best. And yeah, you still could pick a somebody who just is a lunatic, but it doesn't guarantee that. But anyway, yeah,
As
I just
as
think it gets the mind's thinking strategy. They're going to that you can't control the mindset of the voter, but at least it gets them thinking about what's important regarding the job rather than what their feelings are about abortion or gay rights or whatever else that these folks have no control over. And that's what I was just wondering.
That's yes. Well, good wishes as you wrestle with that, which is not an easy question. I will just add one piece of wisdom, which comes to me from our Washington State Association of County Auditors in their talking points about ranked choice voting in response to some people's allegation that perhaps ranked choice voting might not elect a strong candidate. They say, oh, no voting method can guarantee the quality of the candidate who gets elected.
Yeah,
And that is
that's
certainly the case for our
that's
current
true.
method as well.
But if you could put the finger on the scale to get that direction, hopefully ranked choice voting is that type of process a little bit.
Well,
But
what ranked choice voting absolutely does is
yeah,
it guarantees that the winner has the support of the broadest possible group of people who are voting in that election. Yeah. It makes sure that a candidate can't get elected with only a small but passionate base of support. And as you all may be well aware, California is facing a potential recall election, or there is a recall election on September 14th. And whatever you think of the first question, shall the governor be recalled or not? If he doesn't make that 50% margin, there are some 40 odd candidates on the list who then voters will get to pick one candidate to who, and whoever gets the most votes will win that election. And if you do the math quickly, 40 candidates, that could mean that the next governor of California is elected with 5 or 6% of the vote. And ranked choice voting is not going to be used in that case. But one can see that ranked choice voting, what it does is ensure that nobody can win an election unless they do have a majority of the votes that are still active in that last round of counting.
I'm going to have to exit just for a little bit. I'll
Sure.
be right back.
Apple Chris calls.
Yes.
So Lisa,
Yes.
I have a question because I in my conversations with you, we were talking about, and it was after Greg Kimsey talked to me, he talked about education And you brought up a really good point. And then when I had a conversation, with the elections office in San Francisco, they brought up this exact same point, is that a lot of the education that happens around ranked choice voting is done by the candidates because
Right.
they want
That's right.
to assure that people know how to vote for them, right? And they want to assure. So maybe you could expand a little bit on that because you talked to me a little bit about it, and I was thinking, wow, that really makes sense, you know?
Sure. Well, thanks, Commissioner Niles, for bringing that up. It is such an interesting point, and I often see it really resonate with people when they think about it for the first time. We have not had the benefit here in Washington State of having ranked choice voting used in the time that Fair Vote Washington has been around. So we have been learning, watching other state groups, and what I can tell you, it's really been uplifting to see what happens in places where ranked choice voting is coming for the first time to a community. Typically, what will happen is the local advocacy group that's supporting having ranked choice voting come will offer workshops for candidates who are running to help candidates think through how their strategy for campaigning might want to change, given that it's a ranked choice election. One of the first things to go out the window is negative campaigning because it just isn't effective in ranked choice elections. And then another is to encourage candidates to go out and knock on doors and talk to voters. That turns out to be the most effective way to get elected in a ranked choice election, is to actually just do that work, knocking on doors or whatever it is in COVID times to talk with voters. And when candidates are doing that, it behooves them to have a sample ballot and to show the voters how to vote in a ranked election. Hey, I urge you to vote for me first, rank me first. That means marking in the first column, marking the oval like this. And if you have another candidate you like better, that you're going to rank them first, then please mark me second. And this is how you do it. And so again, those one-on-one conversations with voters, showing them how to rank. It turns out voters understand it quite easily. I think you may all know the data that this most recent New York City election polling after the election showed that 95% of the voters reported that it was simple to use, simple to vote in the ranked election. But candidates are the ones who have the greatest incentive in the moment to make sure the voters understand how to vote. And so, yes, a lot of the voter education in all the jurisdictions that have implemented ranked choice voting in the last 20 or so years, much of that heavy lifting for voter education has been done by the candidates.
Thank you. I just thought that, oh, wow, that makes total sense when you brought it up, and I was like, oh, yeah, I should have thought about that.
And it's simple, so voters
Yeah.
get it. It's not complicated for voters to figure that out. So
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge the fact that, when I talked to, the elections office in San Francisco, they said the exact same thing. And if anybody wants to see like a really great educational place to see about ranked choice voting, San Francisco has a great website. It's, it's 4 or 5 different languages and sample ballots and those kind of things. And I will be they supplied me with a sample mixed ballot. Can you talk a little bit about mixed ballot? I think that there's some people that think that it would be difficult to have that, but I know that there's also we use mixed ballots already in Washington, right?
we actually do. When we use the term
Sometimes
mixed
harder to
ballot,
beat.
we're talking about a ballot that has both the ranked choice and the choose one, the traditional way of voting, on the same ballot card, that you don't need to have two separate ballot cards. Back in 2008 and 2009, when Pierce County briefly used ranked choice voting, one of the things that their election equipment required them to do at that point was to issue two separate ballot cards, one for the ranked choice races that were the county races, and a separate one for the traditional voting. And there were a bunch of reasons why nobody liked having two separate ballots. Voters didn't like it, and the auditors and election staff didn't like it. It was not easy. And since then, that's been almost 15 years now since that happened. The emerging best practices are to put all the races on one ballot. And again, research is demonstrating that voters are not making any more mistakes on the ranked choice sections of the ballot when they're on the same ballot. You compare how mistakes that, overvotes, undervotes, that sort of thing that voters make in the traditional races and in the ranked choice races. And in fact, what data is pointing to actually voters making fewer mistakes on the ranked portions of those ballots. So there's no indication that mixed ballots contribute to any more challenges for voters to follow the rules and so on. And we do have different rules for different races right here in Washington. Clark County, you all were elected in single winner races by districts, I believe, for each of your charter review seats that you hold. But some counties, and I happened to have two examples from Whatcom County and Clallam County, their charter review commissioners are elected as a group. It's several winners, and maybe I can't remember. Maybe it is one per district. But the instructions on those ballots, and I sent some samples to Commissioner Niles. The instructions ask the voters to vote for 5 when they get to that race on their ballot. So most races on the ballot are vote for 1. They get to that race and it's vote for 5. So that's something we already do here in Washington. We shouldn't be afraid of putting, some of the races on the ballot that have ranked choice. Is, the instructions then are rank your choices, and then other sections of the ballot, traditional voting, vote for 1. Voters can definitely handle it, and that is best practice around the country at this point.
Great. I thank you for sending me that ballot, because I thought that was a great example of how, voters can figure out something as easy as ranking or as easy as pick 5.
And may I add, Commissioner Niles, that the one of the things that Fair Vote Washington is committed to doing is to being supportive of the auditors and elections administrators and understanding the capabilities of the voting equipment in the different counties. And we have been doing a deep dive into, because you all are working on this, into the equipment, the Heart Verity equipment that's in Clark County right now, and that equipment can handle mixed ballots. So it's
great.
good. Yeah.
Oh, great. And then just for those tuning in, just to she mentioned our election system, Verity. Am I saying that right?
Heart is the vendor, HART,
Heart.
and then I think Verity Intercivic is a model. Although, yeah,
okay.
I'm at the edge of what I am competent to talk about there.
For those of you that weren't here last week, Auditor Kimsey said that yes, they can change, they can do updates, and they can get him the capability of doing that, and that they have done that. The one thing that that Greg Kimsey brought up is he requested that if we were going to do choices, that we only did 3, and so I mean, so I know there's kind of a fine, that's something that, the Charter Review Commission will have to think about, like how many choices do we want to have? 4, 5. I know San Francisco went from 3 or 4 to 10, and it
Can you explain that, what you mean by choices? Because
right, I'm gonna
you
have
get 1,000 people apply for a job.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
just
apply for an office.
that was part of my question. Let me finish. Yeah.
Oh.
So I was going to ask Lisa to kind of explain that, the grid and what that looks like, and the choices. And then if Fairvote has any kind of feelings about how many choices that people should have, or ballots, or that kind of thing.
Great. I'm glad to address that. And Commissioner Lasher, let's just clarify the distinction between, I'm going to call them rankings, how many rankings a voter can make, and how many choices. That's going to depend on how many people decide to run for the office. That's, like you said, 1,000 people could apply for the job. So, yeah, so, maybe like Seattle had a mayoral race recently. I think how many candidates? Maybe there were 15, or we had 36 candidates for governor. So that's how many choices voters have. How many are you going? Is the voting system going to allow voters to rank? though. That's I think the question, Commissioner Niles, that you're asking, right?
It is. Thanks for
Uh,
putting that
and
better than, yeah.
early days of ranked choice voting in this country: San Francisco in 2004, Pierce County in 2008, 2009, Minneapolis in 2009. The voting equipment at that point limited the number of rankings to 3. That was typical, that there was a limit of 3 rankings. And since then, voting equipment has added the capability to allow more rankings. And as Commissioner Niles said, the city of San Francisco just recently upgraded their equipment and now can offer voters to rank up to 10 candidates.
Is that in their charter? Or is that something that's just process that they could do? Do we get involved
I
in
have
that?
all that information that I'll send you, Doug. The San Francisco replied, but
In their charter, it's in their charter.
to
The
use
number?
ranked choice voting, I'm
No,
not
no.
sure.
The number of that you could use. Did they put that in there?
I'm not sure if they actually did an amendment. I think it was an initiative when he talked to me. He said that they did it, but I'm not sure. Maybe Lisa knows.
I don't know the answer to that. I would be surprised if they had specified the number of rankings in their charter amendment. I think, again, that would not be according to best practice to do that. You may be aware that New York City, when they used ranked choice voting this last summer for their mayor's race and others, they offered voters 5 rankings. So at this point, emerging best practice around the country is about 5 to 6 rankings seems to be enough for most voters. Most voters don't seem to feel a need to rank more than about that many. And when voters do have about 5 or 6 ability to rank about 5 or 6 candidates, they can typically make choices even in a large field to ensure that they're ranking the candidates they really like best, and also some of the candidates who are most likely to make it to that final round of counting. In other words, the front runners, so that voters have an option to do both of the things that is beneficial to do when you're voting in a ranked choice election, which is say who you really like best, and also say who, well, if it comes down to these 2 or 3 front runners, these are the ones that I like best, these 1 or 2. So 5 or 6 rankings would be our recommendation, that in that range, and up to 10 is certainly fine.
Okay, great. That would be something. And I guess next month, commissioners, we would be thinking about like what ballot language, and then I'll reach out and get like all of that information that you asked for, Doug, from San Francisco and you see what their language and process was around that.
May I add, Commissioner Niles, that when it comes time for you all to work on ballot language, we can definitely put you in touch with some of the attorneys in the country who've done the most work on this sort of thing. There's one person who worked with us on the San Juan County Charter review, charter amendment language. Am I saying that right? To draft that ordinance, and he's done many of those around the country. I just thought he was terrific to work with. So we can point you to some of these folks who are available, really pro bono work. These folks at organizations like the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center and others who are available to help you all.
Oh, that would be great. Just having examples of stuff that they have worked on would be really helpful. That would be awesome. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions?
I do have one other comment though.
Okay.
The question I did ask about just having one part of the elected officials run. I think your comment for the voters' perspective, having different methods of voting on a ballot can be more frustrating and confusing, and maybe it would be just better to do it all rather than bifurcate. I was concerned that if you do it for all, will there be more pushback against ranked choice voting? But I think the answer is that we want to keep it simple.
And Commissioner Lasher, I can also add, just because you're in the enviable place of not going first in the country. Now you would be, taking a lead in the state of Washington, but there are many examples now to look at. And what I can absolutely tell you overwhelmingly is that voters, when they try it, they like ranked choice voting. So I don't think you need to be feeling that, hey, maybe we'll just introduce them in small
It's
bits.
not the voter I'm worried about. It's the
Oh,
other folks that are
okay.
tradition
Yeah,
will fight it. And so
that's true.
I'm there has to be an answer to that. And that's what I was trying to get at, just doing the local, one part that they would obvious say that, that isn't important. So yeah, let's just do ranked choice voting with the administrators and not the counselors. So, but I think the comment that you made that it really needs to be done ballot wide, I think could lend for more angst about what government's doing if we
I
had
don't,
it bifurcated.
I guess you're losing me, Doug, because I didn't hear her say anything about ballot wide. I think we talked about, so if we were going to be doing it because it's going to be a mixed ballot, right? Because the city's not doing it, so it, so I think that your proposal that you're bringing up is
We're just talking about county.
you would just
Countywide.
like to
Yeah,
do
I,
it.
I can't control the state legislature
Yeah. So
yet.
So that's something for us to talk, I guess, about next month, whether we want to just do it for that, but and for everybody to,
It,
but I don't
the
know,
the
but you're
elections
referencing that yeah,
will be on
okay,
if
you
they
lost.
pass. If the resolutions pass, the or if they don't pass, it'll still be on the even year. So it'll just be county, and it will be usually state and federal races. Yeah, we don't have to worry about cities or other taxing districts because those ballots tend to get pretty long.
Either way, we're going to end up with a mixed ballot. So,
Yeah.
but I did send out. Doug, did you get the examples I sent out of mixed
Yes.
ballots?
Yeah.
Okay,
I saw it,
they
but I
seem really just
probably got in a sack
very
and printed.
clear and very, yeah.
Yeah. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, I was really impressed by it. Um, any, Anthony, do you have any questions?
I think most of the questions that I've had have been addressed. So
Oh, I think,
there's all the details of when we start writing ballot language. There's going to be a lot of
yeah,
nuances and
yeah.
the little details that we'll have to address. But the everything that Lisa can contribute to the conversation. I mean, I'm super happy with what we're hearing, and I think it's exciting to be able
So
to look at language for this if the commission chooses to move forward with it.
so your advice is keep it simple.
My
Yeah.
advice is work with an attorney who has some experience with this and compare several different versions because you do not have to write it yourself. You do not have to make it up. You have plenty of jurisdictions around the country that have done similar things. We can get you a collection of things to look at and then work with your legal staff in the county. And I'm sure you will come up with something that works well for Clark County. And we're glad to consult if we can be helpful at all.
I do want to take this opportunity to just tell Verva like how appreciative and responsive they've been to like any requests that I have or for information and those kind of things. Really appreciate it and really appreciate the help doing this because I'm not an expert.
Well,
But
if I may, Commissioner Niles, I just wanted to also appreciate the fact that you took the initiative to reach out to elections board in San Francisco. That was really sensible. And I guess the one thing I want to leave you with, all of you, is just, again, remember, it might feel as though, when you hear back from folks you're speaking with in Washington, it's like state, like, oh, this hasn't been done and we don't know how this is going to go and so on. Remember that you're actually part of a much wider group of folks all around our country who are ahead of where you are right now. And so lots of models of jurisdictions that have implemented it, and in every case I'm aware of, they're all really happy with their decision to move in this direction, and the implementations have gone smoothly and well, and they're really glad to be a resource for you. So those kinds of logistical hurdles, there will be a lot of help to address those going forward.
Oh, you know what? You segued into a really great question that I almost forgot to ask you. So this commission, the commission adjourns on December 31st. And I know that was another question that was asked by some of the commissioners going, oh, well, we won't be a commission, so we won't be able to work on this next year, or we won't be able to advocate for this. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about the advocacy groups that are around the state that are doing this kind of work. I know there's a good handful of people that are working on this kind of stuff that would kind of take up some of that education piece and work towards this.
Definitely glad to. And maybe some of you may even be aware of local groups that I may not even be on top of. But I can say just right from the start, of course, my organization, Fair Vote Washington, we have supporters in every county, every legislative district. We're approaching about 10,000 people, I think, around the state who really want to see ranked choice voting move forward in our state. And that's, across the ideological spectrum. League of Women Voters. There's a coalition of about 30 mostly community-based organizations called the Washington for Equitable Representation Coalition. And you can look them up. They have a website, and they include some large groups: Faith Action Network, Washington Conservation Voters, League of Women Voters, Greater Spokane Progress, Washington Community Alliance. Several of those organizations I mentioned are themselves coalitions of, in some cases, as many as 100 or so organizations. And I know that I should have looked up before speaking with all of you. I know there are some in your area, but I'm not going to try to name any right now. So many organizations are on board and supporting ranked choice voting. And again, want to emphasize that these are not on one side of the political spectrum. These are a really range of political perspectives. And so a lot of diversity in the coalition of organizations that will be very enthusiastic to support voter education efforts and implementation efforts in Clark County and make sure it's successful.
Okay,
So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? I think that I think I'm good. Doug, do you have, I'm sorry, Doug, Commissioner Lasher, do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, Lisa, we want to thank you for coming. We're just going to talk a little bit about our work plan that we're going to be presenting tomorrow, and that kind of stuff. You can, you're welcome to stay if you want to listen in, but
I will leave you. I think I'm going to go bake an apple crisp. I've been thinking about that for the entire 45 minutes. So I'll let you know how it turns out. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Take care.
I know,
Bye-bye.
Doug. I can't. All right, Doug, are you a baker?
Yes, I'll eat anything
Oh,
that
okay.
isn't too
So,
slithery or doesn't have too many legs.
so you guys, I did invite. Is it Kaya Dunn? Kaya, am I saying your name right?
Yes,
Hi.
Kaya.
Hi, Kaya. I invited Kaya for you guys to meet her. She's maybe Kaya, you can introduce yourself. I do want to tell you that she enthusiastically emailed me back and said, "Yeah, I'd love to work on this." So Kaya, you want to introduce yourself to the subcommittee and for the people that may be listening?
Will do, yeah. I'm Kaya. I'm going to be a sophomore starting in late September at University of Washington. I'm interested in studying political science, and I've born and raised in Clark County, so I was really interested on getting more involved in our county and how it works, and just understanding the ins and outs of it so that I have more like work experience as well as learning more about my county. So I've always been interested in ranked choice voting. I love talking about it with my friends who are probably bored, but I'm into it. And so when I heard about this opportunity, I jumped. I was like, I am interested all the way, especially hearing that we're going to be one of the first like in Washington. I was like, that is really cool. So I'm excited to be involved. Thanks.
Okay, and thank you, Kaya. I have to be really honest, like as I'm going through this journey myself, I'm finding it kind of fun myself doing all of these, this research and stuff. So, so that commissioners, the things that I thought that I would talk, like connect with Kaya about working on was examples of ballot language, examples of what that looks like in other counties and other municipalities that have passed it, what their initiatives or their amendments look like. And then the other thing that I thought that we would start get that, once we did that, that we could start working on was around FAQs and FAQs that were structured the way they need to be restructured for our to go on our to ultimately end up on the county site. So those are the two things that I thought I'd start getting her working on. If any of you guys have any suggestions for that, let me know.
They're big projects.
Yeah, does that sound like a plan? Like to get us moving next
Yeah.
month and get us going? Okay, okay, that sounds great. And Kaya, we're so happy to have you. And we'll probably let you, if you don't mind coming to the meetings, and then you can give us an update on your research and those kind of things. And I think that would be a good way to do it. Yeah, if everybody agrees. The other thing I wanted to talk about real briefly, Anthony, I sent you like a kind of a final version of the work plan, and that's what you'll present during the you'll pull up tomorrow during the meeting. Yeah. Okay. And then I'm just gonna I feel pretty confident going through that work plan and just showing that we are kind of ahead of schedule. So so I think we're on a good course. So if anybody wants me to talk about anything in particular, I will be, I'm going to probably stick to the work plan, and then, a lot of the data that we're collecting will be sent to commissioners next month, as we get it, with all the information with, Chris Cook's decision or opinion that she sent out. And if that sounds like a plan, that sounds okay for everyone on how to approach our subcommittee update or work plan update. Anybody else?
Just to let you know, next week I'll be at a different location. I'm hoping I'll be able to log on, but I think Anthony and Dorothy, you said you could log on if need be the person. I don't know. I've set up the meetings, but I if I can't log on, I'll call in.
Okay.
I should be able to.
Okay, great, Doug. Yeah. Next month will be fun because we'll be doing all that like actual ballot language and stuff. So that'll be super fun if and then the last thing on the agenda is anything that any of y'all want to talk about. Have anything?
No, I think we covered it all. I'm really super happy about how fast this is going and how much it seems like it's totally feasible from all the responses we've gotten. So I think, yeah, I mean, when you talk about it tomorrow at our meeting, I think just keep emphasizing that like we talked to Green Kids Meet, like we talked, like we're getting back responses that say this is totally feasible. We can do this. There's no reason for us not to move forward. This is what the people want. We should put it on the ballot.
I totally agree, Dorothy. It's been very encouraging talking to everybody about it. And then I just wanted to know, because I wanted to let the subcommittee members know that we got about, I think, 13 emails in the last week that are just thanking us for our work. And those they were sent to me, and some of them were CC'd to Tina. And so I just responded just saying thank you for your email. We'll add this to public comment. So Anthony, you'll probably get those tomorrow, and you'll have to figure out how you want to do that. But I'm really encouraged about the continued public interest in seeing this, and so that was really encouraging. Yeah, and with that, I think that's it. I think that's it, unless anybody has
Okay.
anything else.
I'll stop the recording then. Is that okay?
Okay, let's adjourn.